Hello, and welcome to Why This Beer. I'm your host, Darren Benema from Neighborhood Brewing, and alongside me is my co-host, Azlan Graves from Main Street Brewing. We're thrilled to have you join us on this journey into the world of beer. On this podcast, we'll be interviewing brewers and other folks involved in the beer-making process. We want to dive deep into what excites them about beer, learn some tips and tricks, and maybe even uncover a few secrets along the way. In these challenging industry times, we're all about promoting positivity and spreading those good vibes. To kick things off, we're highlighting some fantastic brewers from right here in British Columbia, our home brewing region. We might also do some deep dives into specific beer-related topics, particular ingredients or styles. It all depends on where our curiosity takes us. And hey, we want to hear from you too. If there's something you think we should be talking about, or someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the show, let us know. For our first episode, we decided to keep it in-house to take our recording software for a spin. We did have some hiccups along the way, so you might notice a few weird cuts and jumps. But don't worry, we've got it sorted for the next time. So, with no further ado, here's my chat with Azlan from Main Street Brewing. Enjoy. Hey there, beer aficionados. Welcome to a brand new episode, the first episode of Why This Beer, the podcast where we crack open a cold one and dive into the fascinating world of craft brewing. I'm your host, Darren Benema from Neighborhood Brewing, and as always, I'm joined by the beer maestro himself, Azlan from Main Street Brewing. How's it going, Azlan?
Hey, it's going well. Thanks a lot, Darren.
Did you like that? The beer maestro?
What a gracious intro.
It
I'll
was
put that
all
on my resume.
All ChatGPT for the win, so I can't take too much credit for it. Thank you, bots. Bots of the world. This is an extra special episode as it marks the beginning of our adventure into the heart of the BC craft beer scene. We don't know exactly how this podcast will develop, but we do know that our goal remains the same, which is to have a blast, learn from the best in the industry, and of course, spread the love for our local BC brews. Sound good?
That's right. Yeah, that sounds great.
Right, so let's dive in. Today we're diving into the world of craft brewing with the man behind the brews at Main Street Brewing, Azlan Graves. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much, Darren. Pleasure to have.
Cool. So who is Azlan Graves, and what lured you into the fascinating world of craft brewing?
Craft beer. It's been a long time. I feel like at this point, despite only being 33 at this, my dad was always into craft beer. Like, I think based on the fact that it's like home brewing was such a big thing in the 90s and early 2000s for him. Dan's home brewing, rest in peace, Dan, was like the spot for craft beer. If you were tired of drinking Molson, you just made your own. So that's Dad kind of taught me how to brew beer. He had his annual recipes. He had a fresh hop red ale that he called Double Axe Head, because he'd use 2 axe heads to sink the fresh hops that he'd go pick down into the wort.
Sweet.
And kind of got the bug from there.
Where was he getting those fresh hops, like, at the time? Just like,
oh, they're just like wild hops that grew in the creek in Warfield. Yeah. So no distinct like lineage or character. Probably grassy. Yeah, I think. I moved to Vancouver with kind of the idea of trying to get into beer in 2009. It was very much at the time. I remember dropping off my resume at the breweries in Vancouver, which was pretty easy to cover all of them. That was Storm and R&B, and then there would have been Steamworks and Dick's and Yaletown, but those were all pretty much one-man operations. So I remember going to Storm and R&B and basically getting the same answer of it. It's like being like, yeah, it's like us or it's myself and like one other person. I'm not really ready to hire anybody. And then I remember hearing about Powell opening up, and I think it was like even before they had opened their doors, I like sent over an email and pestered David to just come and take a look at the space. And it wasn't until probably a year after that I think I got a job in the tasting room, with like part of the role being to help out in the back here and there, and that's when it was, I think it was a 3-hec nano system. It was just like a kegel setup on steroids. Yeah. And that was kind of the first time starting to help out in the back, and just kind of, I had been homebrewing a whole bunch at that point, but definitely probably didn't make anything worthwhile. Yeah, and from there just kind of paid my dues at Powell, worked primarily like washing kegs and working in the tasting room for the first while, and transitioned to the bigger space. And then from there, eventually started working in the back more full time. Yeah, I don't even remember the date, but it was shortly after I started, so must have been 2013, 2012. It's amazing that what Slowhand has packed into that space. There's been 3 different breweries in there now, and everybody refines the floor plan a little bit further. Yeah, exactly. It's really fun just being able to, like, I don't know, having, for any brewery, having a tasting room employee that is working in the back is like so awesome, to just be able to like have that direct attachment to your product and then to your consumer and be able to chat about it where you can. It's pretty wicked. From there, it's just tasting room shifts became less and less, and David gave me the opportunity to work in the back full time, which was great experience. Yeah, Powell was great. David definitely took a pretty big risk taking me on, and had a lot of patience with teaching me. It's like one thing to be a home brewer who thinks they know how to make beer versus working in a production space. Great opportunity working with him and working with the other employees. It was Grayson, Alex, and Chris, just getting to work with everybody and learning from their experiences as well. Kind of got to a point naturally, I think, where it was time to move on. I'd also gone to school for nursing, so I needed to do a certain amount of hours to maintain my license, and it seemed like a time to take a step back, and did that while looking for kind of what the next opportunity was going to be. That ended up showing up as the Steamworks brew pub, which was an incredible opportunity. It's there for shorter than expected, based on COVID and things, but it was great running that place kind of as a test kitchen to trial ingredients, process, and different things, and kind of essentially having the buying power of a huge brewery and just playing around.
Playing on a smaller scale than like their big production side of things. Yeah.
With giving some like great direction and having the resources and stuff from the whole team there. Timing wise, COVID ended up happening, and the brew pub kind of went into a bit of a dormant period. And that's kind of at the time when Main Street was looking for a new head brewer, so transition there, and that's been awesome. I'm 3.5 years there now, and it's kind of everywhere's got its quirks, but these ones are mine. That's cool.
So, taking on the head brewer role at Main Street must have been like a big move for you. How was the transition, and did you find it intimidating following the footsteps of someone like Jack, who was the previous head brewer there?
Yeah, fortunate enough, like, Jack is super approachable and helpful, and Ted, who is the head brewer when I took over, also like good friend, learned under Jack, and is having that direct line of communication with the predecessors was amazing for making that transition a little easier. I think the big thing is learning how to manage people. I'm still learning that constantly, and that's like a big growth curve. It's delegating tasks and teaching people how to do it when you haven't necessarily got formal training yourself in all of it.
Yeah, I was just talking about that this week because I spent so much of my time devoted to like making sure the beer quality is good, and then you don't think of like you have to think about, oh, I need to also manage people now to make sure that the beer quality is good. Yeah. And that's a whole nother thing in its own right. And
learning
for sure.
Yeah. Trying to learn and navigate and figure out my communication skills, my shortcomings, and making sure that I can relay the information that I do know in a way that people can actually understand it.
Yeah. It's all up here, but it's downloading it to everyone else can be challenging for sure, right? Yeah.
But,
cool.
Like Nigel and Cam have been super helpful on that aspect, which is great. And we work together quite well in navigating those situations. Yeah.
How did you put your stamp on the beer program at Main Street? Or like, how has the beer program shifted now that you've been in charge for a few years now? Or has it shifted much?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, with Main Street, like, the thing that attracted me to it was they've always had like a good base of core product, and they're always been like approachable, sessionable beers. So I think like when I came in, there was definitely a few things that just naturally I wanted to make my own or tweak or adjust, but trying not to make any drastic changes, and working with ownership as well as working with Jack and Ted, and just discussing like what is true to brand, like what is Fox's intent, or like and defining that as
I guess maybe to back up, what's the story of Main Street Brewing? They've been around for a long time as well. Kind of maybe if you can share what the history of that brand has been.
Yeah, so like Main Street, it's coming up on its 10th year here. Pretty big celebration for end of May, and that's a huge milestone for the business. It's originally started. It's in a historic building in Mount Pleasant that was originally used for like cooperage and horse and dray for a lot of the breweries in the Mount Pleasant area. So originally was a brewery building. Spent time after that as a mechanic shop, and then was vacant for a little while. And when Jack, Nigel, and Cam and their team kind of found this place, it just seemed like a natural fit. It's a pretty beautiful historic building, and they just kind of set out to make sessionable, approachable beers, but like from a craft approach.
Yeah, I always remembered seeing those bright red Main Street Pilsner cans. That was, I think, the brand that it really revolved around at first, which doesn't seem that. I mean, I feel like at the time there wasn't actually a lot of people that were focusing on Pilsner or even lager.
Totally. I mean,
as their core beer kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the Main Street legacy brand. At that point, it's the beer that they started with as their brand identity, and they were contracting it originally through Russell while building out the brewery and developing that. And it used to come in bomber bottles. It's great. Oh, yeah. If you remember bottles.
Wow. I remember bottles. I bought many a bottle back in the day.
Yeah.
I think I was talking to you about that to back up with you too, is that when I was first getting to beer, I remember the first growler that I ever bought was a little like 1 liter growler that I got at Powell Street, the original Powell Street, the Dive Bomb Porter.
Yeah.
And it was like, I just vividly remember like driving in and parking and walking in just like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like, okay, here I am,
Totally.
ready to get my growler. Yeah.
I think that was probably like, I remember getting the first, like that being one of the first growlers I got as well. And I remember getting the Hoptimonium IPA, which man, that IPA was so piney. I'd love to like try it again if I could convince David to brew another fresh batch of,
go back in time,
pull that out from the archives.
Yeah.
But I remember bringing that to a camping trip with my dad, and he just religiously drank Central City, like Red Racer IPA.
Red Racer IPA, yeah.
And bringing him that, he was just like, he was so amped. Yeah.
That was the time where like Cascade was supreme.
Oh,
like, it was Cascade and Centennial were just everywhere. Yeah. We didn't even have Citra Mosaic, so it was just those, and it was how much of that were you willing to put in a beer, and then and just dry hop it too. Yeah,
pine and grapefruit peel.
Yeah. Now when I brew with those hops, it just like brings me back. Like, if I just have a beer with those two hops, it just will always be that time period of like 2008 to 2012. That was all IPA. Everything was.
I mean, Cascade is like our biggest contract at Main Street, and I love using that hop. Like,
oh yeah, it's lasted this long for a reason. It's still great. Yeah, we have a core beer with that too, and it's like, oh, this is nice. I like the low alpha. It's not so high alpha that you can use it, and it's not gonna like detract.
Yeah, you can layer it in.
Yeah,
there's also like such a nice variety within Cascade, depending where, what, when.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's like how much lemon and how much orange do you want? Because I think that's a huge. Yeah, some of them can be super lemon pledgy, in not a good way, but then some of them are just awesome, like burnt orange, amber orange thing, which I think is sweet.
Yeah,
awesome.
Totally. I totally get. Yeah, like this with some of the latest Cascade we got from YCH. It's just like there's some rich, sweet, like tangerine and like candied orange. It's incredible.
I guess, yeah, if people don't know, like some of the Cascade and we select for Amarillo too, and some of those old school hops, I don't know what it is, but the new lots that we're getting of them are just bangers. They're great and so full of flavor. Like, sure, it's an old school hop, but those hops, like pound for pound, are fantastic. And sometimes we'll even select something that's not too crazy. Like, it can be an awesome, like, lemony jasmine thing, which it sounds awesome, but for us, we don't want to, like, how we select is, like, we want it to be like a Cascade. We want in our mind, like, that's how it's supposed to be. So
totally.
we're selecting for like a more traditional Cascade because we're using it in core brands primarily.
Yeah,
but if
I remember.
You want to, there's a whole spectrum of Cascade flavors you could get in a way.
Yeah, I remember selecting with Steamworks, and that was like one of the most eye-opening experiences. Is just like going through a table of Cascade and just like we all unanimously liked this one lot, but then just being like, okay, but what is Steamworks Pale Ale?
Yeah,
and then 100%. We're like, yeah, no, it's that lot. Like, you're like, that's the more traditional Cascade, but like, there's this one over here that's just like, hard orange candy, like lifesaver type of thing, and you're like, holy. Yeah.
There's a whole other world, you know. Yeah, for sure.
Who's going to do the first 100% Cascade hazy IPA that blows everyone's socks off?
Exactly. I'm sure it's out there. It just doesn't sell on the can. That's the problem.
Yeah. Marketability isn't there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the same thing. Yeah. Doesn't get everyone excited the same way. Yeah. Cool. A little tangent, but I think it's interesting. So do you want to have a beer break now? Do you want some Naked Fox?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm done my other beer, so I'm a little bit incentivized.
Timing's right.
Yeah. So I guess this is the segment of the show where we say, why this beer? and the kind of name, that's where the name's coming from.
Yeah.
Azlan, why should people drink Naked Fox?
Yeah, like, I think going back to, like, putting your own stamp, like, putting my own stamp on this, or we really tried to hone in, like, what Naked Fox would be as a true to brand. So that's a bit more of, like, a West Coast, but with, like, a New World approach or look. Wanted to get that, like, amber color in there. This is showing my glass washing skills. And
yeah, Prost.
We wanted to hit those, like, notes of, like, you want some wood, some pine to make it West Coast, some, like, dank or resin, but, like, not be overbearing. You still want it drinkable. Have some stone fruit. Yeah. Is kind of what we went for. Some people go for citrus, but yeah, this beer has been nitpicked extensively. We had like a good meetup kind of that we were doing with all the brewers in East Van. We'd get together like every month and a half, 2 months, and we'd just like bring beers that we're working on. And I think I just brought Fox for like 6 of those meetups, multiple varieties, and yeah, it really honed it in. We're working with Talus Equinaut in 2 different formats, Incognito and T90 pellets, and then Cascade and HBC 682. And yeah, I just think the balance is there. It's West Coast, but not in a way that's palate wrecking, I guess. So as a core product, it is something you can like drink more of. Most recently, we swapped out base malt for Gambrinus IPA malt, which we've been doing a few trials with, and it's a surefire win. That's like a nice way for us to make the malt bill less busy while still accomplishing all those goals of having like a nice sweet malt character while still finishing bone dry. Like this is finishing at like 1.6 Plato. Yeah. It's gives that stage for those hops to really come through without just having to load the kettle or the tank too much. Cheers.
Yeah, it's kind of old school. It's nice and like clear, which is great for a West Coast IPA. That's always the thing about IPA. You know, it's if it's supposed to be West Coast, people are pretty sticklers about that. I don't know if it says that on the can. I guess it just says IPA, but yeah.
I think it's kind of implied. Yeah, it's like it used to be have a lot of different hops. Politely saying, it was definitely a recipe that was developed to originally use up some hop contracts, and then became a core product, and then had to be like, what's our intent with? Yeah, and I think we're definitely there. We've got we're using Talus Equinaut in 2 different types, like Incognito and T90, and then Cascade and HPC 682, and using 682 is a bittering hop, formerly known as Pato. That is redacted. And it's got an insane amount of 3MH. It's got this dank kind of berry character that I get out of it, and using it kind of similar to how I used to use Centennial or CTZ, as a little sprinkling in a dry hop. It's I think it makes everything pop a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely adding another dimension that the other hops aren't, right? Yeah,
filling out some of those high points. And,
nice. Yeah, it's definitely got a depth of hop flavor for sure. How is I see you kind of talked about how it's changed over time, just kind of changing some of the hops based on what you guys had access to and what you pushed it to kind of where you want it to be, I guess.
Yeah, like we just kind of went through the hops that were being used in it and being like, oh, the goal with these two is about the same thing, so why don't we trim it down? And kind of kept doing that. There was, I think, 7 different hop varieties in it originally. And with something like 11 different additions. It was, there was, multiple layers in Whirlpool and just all this stuff. And, but all like weird small additions of like, we're using 1 kilogram of Vic Secret and, 3/4 of a kilogram of Amarillo. So yeah, just kind of honing that in to be like, okay, like these two are, the goal is this, let's move these to like hot side, let's move these to dry hop, let's trim that down. And yeah, this is kind of where we've ended up where I think we're on version 23.
Yeah.
At this point.
Never ending process.
Most recent. Yeah. And like, I really have to like, thank the brewing community we have locally for like kind of helping with that, in the sense like we would get together every like month and a half kind of at each other's breweries. It's like Powell, Dagrad, 33, Superflux. Like we just like all chat about whatever beers we're picking through. And yeah, I was probably the biggest pain in the ass because I just like brought Fox.
Like, how about this one? They're like, what did you change?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh yeah, I just like adjusted it ever so slightly. What do you think? And then like at version 19, that's when we got silver at the Canada Beer Awards, gold at the Canada Beer Cup, and it was like, oh cool, like all of these changes are validated. And it's one of our biggest selling cores at this point, which is...
You said you used the Equinaut Incognito. I guess what's the reasoning behind that, and what do you think it adds as opposed to using T90s?
Yeah, like I think we were just like, we're experiencing so much loss, and trying to, especially for a core product, making sure that the recovery of like our hot side wort, just like every little drop counts. And previously using a lot of those products, not been really impressed, I guess, by their, true to type mentality. Whereas like, Incognito is definitely a game changer in the sense that like you're still getting your hot side bitterness, which is for this type of beer. Like I didn't want to add a character that is essentially a flavor adjunct and then I'm just like supplementing the bitterness somewhere else. It allows us to basically, I think our total Whirlpool volume is 2.5 kilograms of T90, and then the rest is Equinaut Incognito. And since we've got 2 core products that are using that, Kingpin and Fox, and since doing that we've added a secondary kettle out, which allows us to recover almost 75 more liters at our size. We're like kind of like an oversized 15 barrel, so we're basically getting about 19 to 20 hex of product to tank, and that's since adding this secondary port. Before we were getting like 18. So
yeah, I found that using like those products hot side, when you are casting out so much more volume, you actually get almost more later on down the line. I don't know how that works out, but it's just like the loss, you start with more, so your losses are less diminished like as you go out through the process.
Exactly. It just gets exponential further down the line.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, to be quite honest, like from like a brewery our size, we're not able to contract or to like select for those volumes, and the consistency and true to type mentality with Incognito is awesome. Like, it's batch to batch. We're able to kind of like really dial in our profile, and then use our other hops to move it a little left or right depending on what we're skewing towards.
Yeah, because every batch of that Incognito is going to be very similar, and they're making huge batches of it, I'm sure. So it's going to be so easy to keep that consistent.
It's kind of seems like they're taking it, like Haas is taking a similar approach to their like Lupomax, where they're, you know, selecting, like doing lot selection and blending for the product that's going into that. That is their best example of what Mosaic, Citra, Equinaut, like, I think they do Centennial. I used Centennial in a cold IPA collab recently, which was awesome. Centennial Incognito was wicked.
Yeah.
But
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on from the Fox, I guess. So I would say the Main Street boasts the best cask program in BC, if not like at least Western Canada. You kind of inherited that program by taking on the job. Like, that was already in progress. Were you excited about that at the time, or was it daunting? I know that if it was me, I would have been ripping those beer engines right out of the walls as soon as I got in there. But kudos to you. You left them in and kept it going. So how was that taking over, and how have you developed that program?
I think they put those beer engines in pretty, like, from the get-go. And originally they were, and it's kind of just based on the interest and demand, they were pretty much just like adjuncted core product. So, you know, it'd be whatever pale ale they had going with a different dry hop. I
remember that was the rate. You'd go to the Alibi Room and it'd be like some Central City IPA.
Whoa, you can only get
now
like
with
Phillips
Amarillo.
Blue Buck. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Blue Buck featuring Citra.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, awesome. I'll get the casks, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gone are those days.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, like, instead of having dedicated cask ale, a lot of it was based on time. They're like, this is what's in tank. We can't brew a pilot batch for every cask. So they actually ended up bringing on Bill Riley, awesome local kind of like beer historian, homebrew legend, and he just did historical styles all done on the pilot system for a long time. Yeah, he laid the groundwork for it to be like historical styles, and now we're just doing deep dives on that. We're making sure that we're bringing in like all of the crisp number 19 floor malted Maris Otter, all the weird new and old English varieties, whether it's like Phoenix is a bittering hop, which has got this insane deep chocolate and spice character. That is something you would never want to use as a dry hop. Or like Olicana T45s, the first ever like cryo refined UK hop. Or like cool. Lupulin enriched UK hop. But yeah, just doing stuff like that. We take a lot of inspiration from like Ron Pattinson's writing and Shut Up About Barclay Perkins, that blog spot, which is a great historical beer resource. And then just add our own twist. Bill had done so much legwork before in establishing like that cask program as a kind of dive into historical beers, which is great. And like my Instagram feed at the time was just full of like Zebulon Beer Projects and Machine House and Hogshead and Forest and Main, and just like really excited about like taking on that. So because it was COVID, there wasn't as many people coming into the tasting room, and so we kind of pivoted it, moved towards putting a lot of those into can,
right,
but still keeping that element of it being can conditioned, and just kind of doing them on a larger scale. They were originally done all on pilot system,
right?
And like 2 40-liter firkins at a time. So moving it up to about, we're getting 10 to 11 hex of product, and then we're able to bring in like far better ingredients.
Right.
The thing that really kicked it off and set the bar was Charles Farm had a bunch of Paul's malt, and so getting in Paul's malt from the UK and using a lot of their English hop selection, which is far more like most of the stuff we were able to get locally. It was just Fuggles or Bramley Cross,
old EKG from like 2012.
Yeah, exactly. So being able to get like Phoenix, Olicana, Jester, all of these like neat English hops, and then just really good quality trad Fuggles and Bramley Cross.
Right.
Like I've never had. I think the first bitter I made with Bramley Cross just being so jammy, and then it's like, oh wow, this can be an incredible process.
Right.
So it's been awesome. The Cask program is a blast. We're consistently doing 120 to 140 hex a year of cask beer, and
That's wild. That's
basically 2/3 of it goes into cask and is served in house.
Yeah.
It's like pretty incredible.
Yeah. Any favorites that you've done recently from that program?
Yeah, we just did a beer with Matt Leckie from BSG and Casey, and Matt used to work with Bass, so he's got a wealth of knowledge for cask ale.
Yeah.
So making a rye bitter with him, and kind of just, I kind of came up with the recipe, and he kind of guided me through some of his process that they were using, and his experience, and kind of worked things together and made an amazing ordinary bitter that's like 2.8%, and just like ever so delicately dry hopped with cashmere.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I can attest. Yeah. It was very, very good. Yeah. And nice to drink a light beer in January that wasn't like excessively dry too. Like I love how the beers have like a very they're low in alcohol, but the mouthfeel is still full. I'm sure just because of just like how much residual sugar is in them, and then also the carbonation on top. Do they finish pretty high in general?
I mean, that's like, we're usually consistently getting around like 3.8 to like 4.2 Plato. That was like 5.5 finishing Plato.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, with like no maltodextrin, no like nothing to like do it other than process.
Yeah. It sounds like, if you didn't know, it would sound like it's very sweet though, but it doesn't taste sweet because there's no alcohol sweetness as well. So it just really is that sweetness, which is really nice.
Yeah, and it's also like a different, like it's a different perceived sweetness, Mm-hmm. It translates more to body and like, not tasting thin. Yeah,
you really need it for those, for sure. And then the mouthfeel from the cask engine as well is really, it keeps you just like downing it. I find when I'm drinking it, I can drink it so fast. Yeah, like it's full of mouthfeel, but also it's kind of light at the same time.
Yeah, there's a term that I learned through cask ale. It's very Moorish, and I'm like, that's an appropriate thing. Yeah,
you want more.
Yeah, have one more sip, and you want more.
I love that term, Moorish.
Yeah,
and it just reminds me of like a bog or a moor in England or something like that.
Exactly.
So it's like really synergistic, perfect terminology. Has there been any casks that you've done that have kind of changed how you look at the more conventional or like American style beers that you make? Has there been any like reverse learning kind of that way?
Yeah, so I think like layering in some of the more like heritage variety barleys, like Maris Otter, but using them in lighter amounts, like with a lot of our hazy IPAs now, we're adding, about 10% Maris Otter for our base malt. And just like adding a bit more depth without adding too much color. I think traditionally I probably would have used a bit of Vienna.
Right.
And Vienna giving a bit more of like it's biscuity, but it's also got that continental European kind of grassy malt character.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like, yeah, Maris Otter just giving that like biscuit, but like a bit of like richer depth and like sweetness.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And yeah, that as well as mash techniques for our other lower ABV beers, just like mashing hot and short contact. We just did a collaboration beer with the Babe Brew family, and it's everyday IPA. It's 3.7%, and like a lot of that is process that we've taken from previous cask ales.
Cool.
In order to have a 3.7% hazy IPA that's still doesn't taste thin.
Right.
It's not watery.
Does that one still finish out at like a higher residual gravity too? Or just higher relative to like a hazy IPA?
Yeah, we got that one finishing at like 3.8.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
That's also a tricky thing trying to navigate and a little risky with the hop creep aspect, but it worked out.
That's good. Yeah. Just kind of watch it for a few days when it's finishing up, make sure it's not going to creep, and then that's like all you can do.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, hazy IPAs can be quick beers. It's like, oh, not really.
They can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. All right. So what is exciting you about the BC brewing industry these days? Kind of a broader question. And like, now that I think our industry is maturing, like, how do you think it's maturing for the better?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like BC's like, maybe doesn't have the population to grab hold of that like the States does. Mm-hmm. For sure, but it's producing some really informed consumers, which is ultimately like pushing the bar higher. And I think the brewery scene as a whole is like meeting that expectation. It's pretty impressive that like, you know, you can go to places and breweries are distributing that far, that remotely, and the quality is there. Like, we've got some incredible mixed firm projects that are out of here, like lagers, ales, everything, hazy IPAs. It's more and more I travel and try things elsewhere, the more I'm impressed by what's at home.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, cool. Like, sometimes I just feel like I'm in a little, you know, I'm shut off from the rest of the world. And then it's like I go over to Europe. My partner's from there. Go over once a year. And I'm like, damn, the beers over here are, like, kind of behind.
Yeah. Well, over there, I've found when traveling, it's a weird thing where you're making this beer that they would have drank 100 years ago, and they're trying their best, at least the craft breweries out there, to make a great double IPA like Pliny, right? Like, they're just like they're almost like 10 years behind our beer scene there. It's very strange. I don't know if you found that when you were traveling there.
Oh yeah, I mean, hazy IPAs in Berlin that are made with all German hops. Sounds delightful.
Just like a
and I'm like, all I want,
dry hop.
Yeah, all I want is a Berliner Weiss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hard to find out there. Yeah, a true one that's not like just sugar, right?
Yeah. Oh, the Schneele Berliner Weiss, though. If you are out there, oof.
I'll have to try it.
Yeah.
Any words of wisdom for aspiring brewers or people that are just kind of getting into the brewing industry now and they're listening on the canning line or they're milling in for tomorrow's brew or something like that? Why should they stick it out?
I think, like, as far as like getting into the industry, or like how to why to stay in the industry?
Whatever you want.
As far as getting into the industry, I think it just means starting. Like, do what you can, even if that's like starting in a tasting room, pouring beers, being close to the product, and getting to know the amount of time on the floor is like invaluable in that sense, and learning like workflow and things like that. And like, there's never been an industry that has been more rewarding yet more challenging for me. Like, the look of seeing friends, family, you know, just complete strangers, like, opening a beer that I've made is doesn't seem to get dull at this point. Although maybe I like stare at them intently and I'm like, oh, is that a positive look? On that first
Did you like that sip, or
yeah. But
yeah, for sure, that moment when you like give someone a beer, you're like, this one's on me, like, and they enjoy it is that's what, like, those little things are what keep me going too. I just did a beer tour today for one of our like key accounts, and like some people that have never been in a brewery before with great questions and interesting to learn. That's super cool to have that experience where you can kind of be like, yeah, this is pretty cool what we do here. This is super unique, and I
always like
goes
to
into
tell
making
people,
a beer.
like, I love talking about beer. Just let me know if I like over talk.
Yeah, it's usually
I just won't shut up.
Yeah, I usually have to ask the start, like, how long of this tour like do you want? Because I could do like a 20-minute or like a 2-hour, whatever you want. We can tailor it to your expectations.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about the Babes Brew and like what that organization's about, because I didn't really, that was new to me. I'd never heard of that group, and if you know about it, like, maybe you can talk about it and what you guys did in conjunction with them.
Yeah, so Babe Brew is a group, I believe it's mostly Eastern Canada. Roxy, I know, is from Montreal, and they've got another member in the States. But they have been, I think they're in their third year now. They do charity beers where a portion of the beer goes to a bursary that is annually given out for continuing studies for women and femme identifying to pursue education in fermentation. And this is their first year that they're releasing it kind of as a single label. Previously, they've done a new label for every beer. They're doing a single label, and then each brewery kind of does whatever beer they want using that label.
Gotcha.
So I think kind of similar to the Black is Beautiful and other stuff like that. Yeah, so we just had their release earlier today. Roxy and another friend, Kath, that was part of their group, flew out for it. We had worked together kind of over email on creating what the beer would be in the recipe, and hosted for the brew day. Hosted Lori. Damn, I'm forgetting the Instagram
I put you on the
handles.
spot.
Yeah, but Lori and Noelle. Noelle's Beer Books Belly Dance. Lori is... I'm sorry. I'm blanking on it.
That's okay.
My apologies, Lori. But we had them out for the brew day. We had representatives from everybody who sponsored, BSG, Mile 37, and Royal Labels.
Yeah.
And it was a great brew day, getting together and making the beer, having them involved. They came out for packaging as well, and then had a nice big release party today. I believe it's the first release for the beer for this year. I know they've got, and it's the first one in Western Canada. They've got another one scheduled in September with Russell.
Okay.
But they're kind of doing 2 beers a month over the next year.
Oh, wow.
All over North America.
So kind of just like a rolling thing.
Yeah, they've got 3 in Orlando, I think, in February.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah.
Okay, so they're globetrotting, getting the word out there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think as it grows, the burster will get bigger and therefore be extended to more people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a nice way to help spread diversity and inclusion within the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's enough people that look like us doing this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that. It was new to me, so it's cool to see another organization like that doing that charge. So that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think as the first release in Western Canada so far has gone really well. Like, just based on the feedback we've got so far, I think it'll be hitting shelves. Saw some of it going out Thursday, Friday, but it'll definitely be out and actually on the shelves next week. So
Sweet.
It seems like there's a lot of interest from accounts as well.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people want to support those causes too, like if they can. So it's nice that they are able to do that from you guys making that beer and collabing on that as well.
Yeah, and it was really nice working with them and just, being able to. They're very much like, oh, just make whatever beer as long as it's something you guys are stoked on. Yeah, exactly.
That's nice. Sometimes it can be challenging making something that's super specific, but I like when their people are open to any idea, or if they have like a really good, clear idea. That's exciting too for me.
Yeah, totally. Take something to guess.
Okay, sounds good. We'll do that. Perfect.
Yeah.
Also, big news. You heard it here first. Best Young Brewer in Canada nomination, Azlan Graves. Are you going out to? Is it Niagara? Is there having the Niagara Falls?
Yeah, Niagara on the
Lake. Are you going out?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, gonna head out Tuesday.
Very exciting.
Tuesday morning. Yeah, I'm stoked. I'm meeting up with pal Brad, who also made the short list for Canadian Brewer of the Year. Brad Tomlinson from Jackknife Brewing in Kelowna. And we're gonna have a night together in Toronto, and then make our way down. Go check out. I actually need to send out an email tomorrow, see if I can
crash some places on the way down.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I should say this is
go check out
Canadian Brewing Journal. Is that that's what it is, right?
Yeah, Canadian Brewing Journal's Brewer's Choice Awards. Right.
Very exciting.
It's
cool.
I'm pretty honored to be on that list. That's a pretty good list so far of brewers. BC's incredibly well represented on both awards, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, I know Kerry Dyson from Brew Hall. He was up here not too long ago. Yeah. He's going out too, so he'll be up there as well.
Yeah, totally. I was in touch with him. I'm excited to. Yeah, it's funny. We literally work 4 blocks apart from each other, and we'll go have a beer for the first time in a long time over in Niagara.
It's a nice place to be. Better, not nicer necessarily than False Creek, but equally nice.
Hey, it's one of those things. Any moment where brewing can take me somewhere I wouldn't otherwise be, that's a win.
Well, I hope you win. That's a big award, but cross my fingers for you.
It's exciting.
Either way,
thank you.
Excited to be nominated for sure, and well deserved.
Yeah, last year I qualified as young, so
that's good. I was worried when I saw that you were for the young brewer. I was like, how young is he? I felt like, oh no.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, no, I literally turned 34 a week after. So
squeezing right under the deadline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hopefully I don't get my medal strip.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. You shouldn't say anything. Maybe you can win again next year too. I'm actually 32. By the way.
Yeah.
I also have it on good authority that you embarked on an African road trip inspired by Paul Simon's Graceland. Why haven't I heard about this adventure? And was there a... Yeah. And what was that all about?
Man, that was like 7 years ago. 8 years ago, maybe now. Jesus.
That's my Nardwuar question of the night.
Yeah, totally. Good one. Graceland was banging in the car on a lot of that road trip. Yeah, no, a friend who, you know how you get places in Vancouver, you got to know somebody. Mm-hmm. So, like a good high school buddy, his older brother had an apartment. He passed it on to me because he got a job in Johannesburg, and so it naturally seemed like, well, cool, we've got a place to stay. Me and the other friend hadn't been together on a trip since we were like 20 in Europe hitchhiking around, so we're like, yeah, let's go do it. We're gonna go do a road trip around Southern Africa.
Sweet.
And yeah, went around, flew into Joburg, and then went through Botswana, Namibia, down to Lesotho, and back to Johannesburg. It was an incredible trip, like 32 days.
Wow.
I think over like 5,500 kilometers, like a tiny little diesel pickup. And
just don't stop,
yeah.
Right? That's what they say.
Yeah.
Don't stop
just
for anyone.
blissfully ignorant.
Yeah.
And man, there was incredible beers on that trip too. Like Namibia being like a German
right
colony, you're like drinking Doppelbocks in the middle of the sand dunes out of like glass boots.
It's like, what? What's happening here? That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, like Windhoek, I think, is the capital or one of the bigger cities there. I'm like, oh yeah, that's very German. That's a German town.
Yeah. I think I remember hearing that they like officially changed Namibia officially changed their national language to English, but it was in like 2008, and they just decided it'd be better for tourism.
Oh, interesting.
That was it. There wasn't like, hey, like we're gonna change everything over from German to English. They're like, no, as of tomorrow we all speak English.
It's like, yes,
so
yes,
the signs
we do.
are still in German. Yeah. Like,
oh, interesting. Wow.
But yeah, no, like craft beer there was actually starting to blow up. It's a lot of German and like a lot of Belgian wit. I remember there's this Poison City brew that we went and toured. That was in Durban. That was pretty sweet. Kept in touch with those guys for a while because they had big plans to try and contract brew in Canada.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess it would be interesting to be like, hey, this beer's from South Africa. But it
yeah,
not really
totally.
Be.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like Guinness.
Yeah.
It's not really.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's true. So, collaboration beers, they're always fun. And some of them can be magical. What's been your favorite collab that you've done? And why was it the one that Powell and Yellow Dog did together when we both worked there?
Yeah. Shit, what was that? It was like a funky saison of some sort.
It was definitely
right?
a funky saison. We didn't know what to really classify it. I think we called it a tart saison maybe in the end or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but it was interesting for sure, to say the least.
Yeah, I remember loading up the van with an IBC tote of our sour culture, which was just a bright tank that I had screwed up from 2.5 years previous.
Yeah, that's another story in itself.
Yeah. But happy accident, maybe? I don't know. We'd have to ask David on whether or not that was a happy accident. And yeah, that's... I don't know. The amazing thing with collaborations is just taking maybe something that like both breweries is not necessarily in their wheelhouse, and like being able to put your heads together and be like, can we make this work?
For sure.
And then there's like so many things that you can learn from that, just spending a work day together and like watching, like there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's plenty of ways to do a CIP
for sure.
And yeah, doing that kind of stuff is so rewarding.
Yeah, I really liked that collab because we did a lot kind of last minute. A lot of the time when you do collab, if you're organized, you do it all in advance over email. All the work is done. You get to show up on the day and kind of just shoot the shit and hang out and
pass the brew sheet off to the junior brewer and watch him do it all.
And then you hang out, talk. You might like scoop the mash out, just to
for the picture. Need the photo op.
That or the hops, depending on what time of the day it is. Often I'll do I call it the fake hop, so you just have the bucket on top of the thing. Like, okay, done. Hops are in. But for that one, I remember specifically that you guys had brought the tote of sourwort. We pasteurized it in the kettle. I think.
The boil kettle.
We just chucked it in there with everything else because we wanted the acidity, but I don't think, and maybe it's some of the mixed culture flavor to come through, but we didn't want it to be infected.
Yeah, trying to make a shelf stable. Yeah.
Which was cool. An interesting way to do it. And then we also were doing, it was kind of the first time we had used Kvike at Yellow Dog. I'd been doing a lot of small batches there with it, just kind of trialing it out because it was at that time super new. I don't even remember where I was getting it from. Maybe Bootleg or something like that. That was the first places that had
at that point it was.
Yeah, I think
Bootleg was pretty much the only place.
So I think I was getting that from Bootleg Biology, bring it up, and then I just would continuously do pilot batches just to keep it going, that yeast, or I'd crop it from my little pilot batches there. And this is the first time that we did a big batch with it. And then I think we were also doing a mixed ferment with Kvike and the Saison DuPont strain as well.
Is that what we did for it?
I think so.
That makes sense.
It was something like that.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I'm how do we get that phenolic character?
It was either the Saison DuPont, or another Saison.
We probably would have been
strain.
using Voss.
Yeah, I think it was. Right? Yeah, I think so. I think Voss is what we would have been using.
I feel like that was the first one that was available.
It was
easily.
Yeah, it was that and Hothead. You remember Hothead? Yeah, just
oh yeah. That was the Imperial one, right?
Yes, I think so. No, I think it was the original. Oh, I think it's the White Labs one. What was that? But yeah, it was Voss and some Saison strain. And I don't remember if we fermented them together or fermented them in two separate tanks and then blended them back together. That was the discussion, and I don't know which route we took in the end. I think the idea was they were going to be two different temperatures, and should we put them together at the middle ground temperature, or just let it
there was a while. There was a while at that time where we were trying to co-pitch Lacto and Kvike and get a repeatable result, because I'm well, they both work at 40.
In theory.
Yeah. But it was just sometimes you'd get a beer that's 3.6 pH. Sometimes it's barely cusping 4.
Yeah, it's how healthy is that Kvike when you chuck it in there, and that would basically take over otherwise. Yeah.
I think I finally settled on staggering pitch rates, and still do that now for
staggering pitch
stuff.
Rates or pitch times, pitch
times.
Yeah, we kill our lactose, so we just, and then we kettle sour and then pitch later. Just easier to deal with. Great. Well, I think we kind of nailed it. All right, and that's the end of the first episode. I want to thank Azlan for being my co-host and the first interviewee on the show. Thanks everyone for listening, and if you've made it this far, we really want to thank you for listening. And if there's any awkward moments with the sound, please forgive us. We're still figuring this out and how to be better hosts, but we're learning with every time we do it. Hoping this will be a real well-oiled machine sooner rather than later. We're excited about the new episodes coming up. We have a lot of friends in the beer industry, and we're excited to talk to them about what new ways they're making their beer taste even better. So please stay tuned for that. And we'll be posting the beers that we're drinking and the guests that we'll be having on our Instagram page, and for those elder millennials like us, on a Facebook page. So follow along to see what's coming up soon. And until next time, cheers.